The way Liam Kincaid saw it happen would stay with him forever. A moment frozen like ice on a winter creek, crystallizing into something that would change the course of his entire life. He had come down from his cabin in the Colorado mountains into Cripple Creek on that blazing August afternoon in 1881. His pack horse loaded with furs to trade, and his mind on restocking supplies before heading back to the high country where he belonged. The town sprawled before him in all its dusty chaos, a mining settlement that had exploded seemingly overnight with the promise of gold drawing men from every corner of the territory. Liam kept his distance from such places usually, preferring the clean silence of the peaks to the noise and stink of civilization. But even a mountain man needed flour and coffee and ammunition. He was a big man, standing well over 6 feet with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway and arms thick with muscle earned from years of swinging axes, hauling traps, and wrestling with the wilderness itself. His hair hung past his collar in dark waves, and his beard was trimmed close enough to be respectable but wild enough to suit his nature. People tended to move aside when he walked past, not from fear exactly, but from the simple acknowledgement that here was a man who belonged to a different world than theirs, rougher and more primal. He had just tied his horses outside the trading post when he heard the commotion down the street. Angry voices carried on the hot wind, and though he generally avoided other people's troubles, something made him pause and look. What he saw stopped him dead in his tracks. A young woman stood in the middle of the dusty street, her arms spread wide in a defensive posture, and between her worn boots and the advancing group of men crouched a mangy dog that looked half-starved and wholly terrified. The dog was nothing special, just a mutt with patchy fur and ribs showing through its sides, but the woman was defending it like it was made of gold. She was small. That was the first thing Liam noticed. Tiny, really, probably not much over 5 feet tall and built slight as a willow branch. Her dress was faded calico, mended in places, and her dark blonde hair was coming loose from its pins. But it was her stance that caught him, the way she held herself like she would take on the whole world if she had to. "That mongrel bit my boy," one of the men was saying, a burly character with a miner's build and a face red with anger. "I am going to shoot it dead right here and now, and you best move aside, miss." "Your boy was throwing rocks at it," the woman shot back, her voice clear and strong despite the tremor Liam could detect underneath. "I saw the whole thing. This dog was minding its own business when your son started tormenting it. Any creature will defend itself when cornered." "Are you calling my boy a liar?" The man took another step forward, and Liam saw his hand move toward the pistol at his hip. The woman did not budge. Her chin lifted, and Liam could see the fear in her eyes even from where he stood, but she did not move an inch. "I am saying what I saw. And I am not letting you kill this dog for defending itself." There were maybe 5 or 6 men with the miner now, all of them advancing, and the woman stood alone except for the trembling dog behind her. The street had gone quiet, people stopping to watch but nobody stepping in to help. Liam felt something ignite in his chest, a fierce protectiveness that came from nowhere and everywhere all at once. He moved without thinking, his long legs eating up the distance between them. His bootsteps were heavy enough that people turned to look, and by the time he reached the confrontation, the miner had noticed him too. "This is none of your concern," the miner said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Liam had that effect on people. "I am making it my concern," Liam said quietly. His voice was deep and rough from disuse, and he saw the woman's head turn sharply at the sound of it. Up close, she was even more striking than he had first thought. Her face was heart-shaped, with high cheekbones and eyes the color of summer sage. There was dirt on her cheek and sweat on her brow, but she was beautiful in a way that hit him like a physical blow. "This fool woman is protecting a dangerous animal," the miner tried again. Liam looked down at the dog, which had flattened itself against the ground and was shaking so hard its whole body quivered. "That dog looks about as dangerous as a newborn kitten. Looks to me like it is half-starved and terrified. It bit my son. After your son threw rocks at it, from what I understand." Liam shifted his weight, a subtle movement that nonetheless broadcast his readiness for whatever came next. "Seems to me the dog was defending itself, just like the lady said." The miner's face went even redder, but Liam saw the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing his anger against the reality of what opposing Liam would mean, and Liam could see the moment the man decided it was not worth it. "Fine," the miner spat. "But that dog better not show up around my property, or I will shoot it on sight, and nobody is going to stop me." He jerked his head at his companions, and they melted back into the crowd, muttering among themselves. The tension drained from the street slowly, people returning to their business with disappointed looks, as if they had been hoping for more excitement. Liam turned to the woman and found her staring up at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Thank you," she said finally. Her voice was softer now, though still steady. "You did not have to do that." "Neither did you," Liam pointed out. "That took real courage, standing up to them like that." A faint color rose in her cheeks. "I could not just stand by and watch them hurt an innocent creature. It would not have been right." Liam looked down at the dog, which had not moved from its spot. Now that the immediate danger had passed, he could see it was in even worse shape than he had first thought. Its coat was matted with dirt and what looked like old blood, and one of its ears was torn. But its eyes were bright and intelligent as it looked between the two humans, trying to decide if it should run. "Are you planning to keep it?" Liam asked. The woman bit her lip, and Liam found himself distracted by the gesture. "I do not know if I can. I am living at the boarding house and Mrs. Crawford does not allow animals, but I cannot just leave it here to be kicked around or worse." "What is your name?" The question came out before Liam could stop it. She looked surprised, then offered a small smile that transformed her whole face. Julia Preston, Liam Kincaid." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that felt awkward and formal, which was strange because he was never awkward about anything. "I have a place up in the mountains. I could take the dog if you want. Give it somewhere safe to heal up." Julia's eyes widened. "You would do that? But you do not even know me. Why would you help?" Liam was not entirely sure how to answer that, because watching her stand up to those men with nothing but her courage and her conviction had stirred something in him he had thought long dead. Because the way she had defended that worthless mutt told him more about her character than 1,000 conversations could. Because looking at her made his chest feel tight and his breath come short, and he wanted any excuse to stay in her presence a little longer. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said instead. "Like you said." Julia studied him for a long moment, those sage green eyes searching his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "All right. But I want to come visit to make sure it is being cared for properly." "Fair enough." Liam crouched down slowly, making himself smaller and less threatening. The dog watched him warily but did not bolt. He held out his hand, letting the animal catch his scent. "Come on, then. Nobody is going to hurt you." The dog's nose twitched, taking in the smell of leather and pine smoke and wild places. Slowly, so slowly, it crawled forward on its belly until it could sniff at Liam's fingers. He stayed perfectly still, patient in the way only someone who had spent years in the wilderness could be. Finally, the dog licked his hand once, a tentative gesture of trust. "There we go," Liam murmured. He reached out carefully and scratched behind the dog's good ear. The animal leaned into the touch, desperate for kindness. "You are good with animals," Julia observed. "Spent more time with them than with people, most of my life." Liam straightened up, and the dog scrambled to its feet and pressed against his leg. "I should get him back to my place, get some food in him. Where can I find you when you want to come check on him?" "The boarding house on 2nd Street, Mrs. Crawford's place." Julia hesitated, then added, "Will you be staying in town long? A few days, probably." "Need to trade these furs and stock up on supplies." Liam found himself reluctant to leave, which was unusual. Normally, he could not wait to escape back to his mountain sanctuary. "I could show you around my place tomorrow if you want. Let you see where he will be living." "I would like that very much." Julia's smile was bright as sunshine, and Liam felt something shift in his chest, like a key turning in a lock he had not known was there. They stood there for another moment, neither quite ready to walk away, until the dog whined softly and pushed against Liam's leg again. "He is hungry," Julia said softly. "You should go. But tomorrow morning—" "I will come by the boarding house at 8, Liam promised. He whistled low, and the dog followed him as he headed back toward where he had left his horses. He could feel Julia's eyes on him the whole way, a warmth between his shoulder blades that had nothing to do with the August sun. When he finally reached his horses and risked a glance back, she was still standing in the middle of the street, watching him. She lifted one hand in a small wave, and Liam found himself smiling as he returned the gesture. The dog looked up at him with something that might have been gratitude in its dark eyes, and Liam reached down to scratch its head again. "You and me both, friend," he muttered. "She is something special, is not she?" The dog's tail gave a tentative wag, the first sign of happiness Liam had seen from the creature. He led the way to the trading post, the dog limping along beside him, and tried to tell himself that the warmth spreading through his chest was just satisfaction at helping an animal in need. He knew he was lying to himself, but for the moment, he did not particularly care. By the time Liam had finished his trading and made his way to the small room he kept above the livery stable when he was in town, evening had settled over Cripple Creek like a dusty blanket. He had bought food for the dog, good meat scraps from the butcher, and he sat on the narrow bed and watched as the animal ate with desperate hunger, like it could not believe its good fortune. "Easy," Liam said when the dog started to gulp the food too fast. "Nobody is taking it away. You can slow down." The dog ignored him, too focused on the first real meal it had probably had in weeks. Liam smiled despite himself and leaned back against the wall, his mind full of sage green eyes and a courage that had no business existing in such a small frame. He had been alone for a long time now, ever since he had lost his family to cholera when he was barely more than a boy himself. He had been 18 then, old enough to strike out on his own, but young enough that the grief had carved him hollow. The mountains had saved him, given him a place where the silence was not oppressive but healing, where he could learn to be whole again without the constant reminder of what he had lost. He was 32 now, and he had built a good life in his solitude. He had his cabin, sturdy and weatherproof, tucked into a valley where a clear stream ran year-round. He had his trap lines and his hunting, enough to keep him fed and to provide furs to trade. He had the vast sky and the whispering pines and the company of eagles and elk. It had been enough, or at least he had convinced himself it was enough. But watching Julia Preston stand up to those men, watching the fire in her eyes and the set of her small jaw, something had cracked open inside him. Some part of him that he had thought permanently sealed away had suddenly remembered what it was to want more than just survival. The dog finished eating and looked up at him with liquid eyes, its tail wagging more confidently now. Liam reached down and ran his hand over the animal's head, feeling the warmth of living fur, the trust of a creature that had been shown kindness when it expected only cruelty. "She saved you," he told the dog quietly. "And maybe she saved me too. Too soon to tell." The dog curled up at the foot of the bed, and Liam lay back, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the town settling in for the night. Somewhere out there, Julia was probably getting ready for bed too, brushing out that dark blonde hair and maybe thinking about the strange mountain man who had stepped in to help her. Or maybe not. Maybe he was just another person in her day, forgettable and easily dismissed. The thought bothered him more than it should have. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it brought dreams of green eyes and fierce courage and a smile that made him feel like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, terrified and exhilarated all at once. Morning came too fast and not fast enough. Liam was up with the dawn, a lifetime habit impossible to break. He cleaned himself up as best he could, washing in the cold water from the basin and running a comb through his hair. He looked at himself in the small, cracked mirror above the washstand and wondered what Julia saw when she looked at him. A rough man, certainly. Someone more comfortable in buckskins than anything finer, though he had put on his better shirt this morning, the one without any holes. Someone whose hands were calloused from work and scarred from encounters with animals and weather and the general hazards of mountain living. Someone who probably looked more wild than civilized, despite his best efforts. He grimaced at his reflection and told himself it did not matter. He was just showing her where the dog would be living. This was not a social call, not really. The dog seemed to sense something was happening and stayed close to his heels as he made his way through the awakening town. 8 o'clock was still early enough that Cripple Creek was relatively quiet. Most of the miners already up at the claims and the honest citizens just starting their days. Mrs. Crawford's boarding house was a neat two-story building painted white, with flower boxes in the windows that somehow managed to bloom despite the altitude and thin soil. Liam knocked on the front door, his heart beating faster than it had any right to. An older woman answered, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and her eyes sharp as they took him in. "Can I help you? My name is Liam Kincaid. I am here to see Miss Julia Preston." The woman's expression softened slightly. "The mountain man who helped her with that dog business yesterday. She mentioned you might be coming by." She stepped back and held the door open. "Wait in the parlor. I will fetch her." The parlor was small but clean, furnished with mismatched furniture that had clearly seen better days but was well cared for. Liam stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, too aware of his size and roughness in this domestic space. The dog sat at his feet, looking around with interest. He heard light footsteps on the stairs, and then Julia appeared in the doorway. She wore a different dress today. A simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and her hair was neatly pinned up. But what struck him most was the brightness of her expression, the way her whole face lit up when she saw him. "Good morning," she said, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. "You came. Said I would." Liam found himself unable to look away from her. In the morning light streaming through the windows, she was even more beautiful than he remembered, though beautiful felt like too small a word for what he was seeing. Julia came further into the room and immediately crouched down to greet the dog, who wagged its tail enthusiastically and licked at her hands. She laughed, a sound like water over stones, clear and bright. "Oh, you look so much better already. Did he feed you?" "Of course he did." "You are not quite so skinny this morning." Ate like he had never seen food before, Liam said. "Going to take some time to get him properly filled out, but he will get there." Julia looked up at him, still crouched by the dog, and Liam felt his breath catch at the gratitude in her eyes. Thank you again. For everything, I know you did not have to get involved. Neither did you, Liam reminded her. That is twice now I have said that, but it bears repeating. What you did took real courage. She stood, brushing off her skirt. My father always said that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. I was terrified yesterday, but I could not live with myself if I had just walked away. Your father sounds like a wise man. Something flickered across Julia's face, a shadow of grief. He was. He passed 3 years ago. Cholera, my mother too, I am sorry. Liam's voice was rough with genuine sympathy. I lost my family the same way. I know what that grief is like. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Liam felt a connection snap into place, an understanding that went deeper than words. She knew what it was to lose everything. She knew what it was to rebuild yourself from ashes and try to find a reason to keep going. Is that why you went to the mountains? Julia asked softly. Part of it. I needed somewhere quiet to figure out how to be alive again. He paused, then added, Seems to me you found your own way to keep going, coming out here to Colorado, starting fresh. I did not have much choice. There was nothing left for me back in Missouri. No family, no prospects. I heard there were opportunities out west, so I came. She smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. I work as a seamstress now. It is not much, but it is honest work and it keeps me fed. Nothing wrong with honest work. Liam cleared his throat. Did you still want to come see where the dog is going to live? I brought my spare horse. It is a bit of a ride up into the mountains. Julia's face brightened again. Yes, I would love that. Let me just get my bonnet and tell Mrs. Crawford where I am going. She disappeared back upstairs, and Liam let out a long breath. His hands were actually trembling slightly, which was ridiculous. He had faced down bears and mountain lions and winters that could kill a man in hours, but one small woman had him nervous as a boy at his first dance. Mrs. Crawford appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed, and her expression stern. You seem like a decent man, Mr. Kincaid, but I am going to say this plain. Julia is a good girl and she has had a hard time of it. I do not want to see her hurt. Neither do I, madam. Liam met her eyes steadily. I give you my word that she will be perfectly safe with me. Mrs. Crawford studied him for a long moment, then nodded. See that she is, and have her back by supper time. I do not care what mountain schedule you keep, but respectable girls do not stay out after dark with men they barely know. Yes, madam. Julia came back down, bonnet in place and a small bag over her arm. I am ready. They walked together to the livery stable, the dog trotting contentedly between them. Liam had already saddled both horses that morning, his own big roan gelding and the gentler bay mare he used for packing supplies. He helped Julia mount, his hands careful on her waist as he lifted her into the saddle. She weighed almost nothing, and he found himself wondering how someone so small could have such a huge presence. It has been a while since I have ridden, Julia admitted as she settled herself. I hope I do not embarrass myself. Horse is steady as a rock, Liam assured her. Just relax and let her do the work. They rode out of town at an easy pace, following the trail that led up into the mountains. The dog followed along behind, limping but determined to keep up. The morning was clear and beautiful. The sky that impossible blue that only seemed to exist at high altitude, and the air smelled of pine and granite and wild things. Liam glanced over at Julia and saw that her face was turned up toward the peaks, her expression one of wonder. It is beautiful up here, she breathed. I have been in Cripple Creek for 6 months, but I have not had a chance to really explore the mountains. They are something special, Liam agreed. He found himself wanting to show her everything, all his favorite places, the hidden meadows thick with wildflowers and the secret springs where deer came to drink at dawn. How are you finding Colorado? It is a far cry from Missouri. Different, certainly. Rougher, but I like it. There is something about the West that feels like possibility, like you can be whoever you choose to be instead of whoever your family name says you should be. She paused, then added with a slight smile, though I will admit I was not expecting it to be quite so dusty. Liam laughed, surprised by the sound coming from his own throat. He could not remember the last time he had laughed. Dust is part of the charm, along with the altitude and the cold and the occasional bear. Bears, Julia's eyes widened. Nothing to worry about if you are careful. Make noise when you are walking so you do not surprise them, and keep your food stored properly. Most of the time they want nothing to do with people. Most of the time, Julia repeated wryly. That is reassuring. They rode higher, the trail narrowing as they climbed. Julia handled her horse well, despite her earlier concerns, sitting easy in the saddle and moving with the mare's gait. The dog was starting to lag behind, its injured leg clearly bothering it, so Liam dismounted and scooped the animal up, settling it across his saddle before swinging back up behind it. He is tired, Julia observed. How much further is it? Another hour or so. But we can take breaks if you need them. I am fine. I am tougher than I look. Liam believed her. Everything he had seen of her so far backed that up. She might be small, but there was steel in her spine. They talked as they rode, the conversation flowing easier than Liam would have expected. Julia told him about her journey west, the wagon train she had joined and the people she had met along the way. She spoke of the vast plains and the endless sky, the way the stars seemed close enough to touch at night. Her voice was animated and warm, and Liam found himself hanging on every word. Hungry for more details about her life, in turn, he told her about the mountains, about the changing seasons and the wildlife and the particular challenges of living in such isolated country. He told her about the first winter he had spent in his cabin, when he had been certain he would not survive, and how coming through it had proved to him that he was stronger than he had thought. "You built the cabin yourself?" Julia asked, clearly impressed. "Over the course of a summer." "It is not fancy, but it is solid. Keeps the weather out and the warmth in, which is what matters. I would love to see it. That is where we are heading." Liam pointed ahead to where a break in the trees revealed a small valley tucked between two peaks. "Right down there." Julia shaded her eyes and looked where he was pointing. Even from this distance, Liam could see his cabin, a sturdy log structure with a stone chimney and a covered porch. Smoke would be rising from the chimney if he had been there recently, but it had been 3 days since he had left for town, so the fire would have long since gone cold. They descended into the valley, and Liam watched Julia's face as she took in his home. The cabin sat beside a clear stream that burbled over smooth stones, and the valley was thick with grass and wildflowers. Towering pines surrounded them on all sides, and the peaks rose above like sentinels keeping watch. "Liam, this is incredible," Julia said softly. "It is like something out of a story." Pride warmed his chest. He was not a vain man, but her approval mattered to him in a way he had not expected. "Took me a while to find the right spot. Needed water and shelter from the worst of the weather, plus good hunting nearby. This valley has all of that." He dismounted and helped her down, his hands again spanning her small waist. For a moment they stood close together, and Liam caught the scent of her, something floral and clean that cut through the pine smell. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, and he saw his own awareness reflected there. Then the dog whined from where Liam had set it on the ground, and the moment broke. Julia stepped back, a faint color in her cheeks, and turned to look around the valley. "Can we see inside?" she asked, of course. Liam led the way to the cabin, pushing open the heavy wooden door. The interior was dim after the brightness outside, but clean and well organized. There was a stone fireplace against one wall, a sturdy bed frame in the corner, and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs. Shelves lined the walls, holding supplies and tools and the few books Liam owned. Furs were stacked in neat bundles, ready to be transported to town for trading. Julia walked around slowly, taking it all in. She ran her fingers over the table, testing its smoothness, and examined the fireplace with its carefully fitted stones. "You really did build all of this yourself," she said, and there was something like awe in her voice. "Had plenty of time and motivation." Liam watched her move through his space and found that he liked seeing her there, liked how her presence seemed to warm the cabin in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. "It is wonderful, cozy and strong at the same time." She turned to face him. "I can see why you love it up here. It feels safe." "That is exactly what it is. Safe." Liam had not quite articulated that to himself before, but she was right. This valley, this cabin, they were his sanctuary from a world that had hurt him too badly. They went back outside, and Liam showed her around the rest of the property. There was a small shed where he kept his tools and extra supplies, a smokehouse for preserving meat, and a lean-to shelter for his horses. The stream ran clear and cold, full of trout if you knew where to look. The dog drank deeply from the water, then flopped down in the shade with a contented sigh. "He likes it here," Julia observed with a smile. "Dogs are smart, they know a good thing when they see it." Liam hesitated, then added, "So are you, I think. Smart, I mean, and brave, and kind." Julia looked at him with surprise, then ducked her head shyly. "You barely know me. I know enough. I know you put yourself at risk for a creature that could not help itself. I know you speak your mind even when it is dangerous to do so. I know you have survived losses that would break most people and come out stronger on the other side." Liam took a breath, feeling like he was standing on that cliff edge again. "I would like to know more if you are willing to share." She met his eyes and something passed between them, some silent acknowledgement of the pull that existed between them. "I would like that too," she said quietly. They sat by the stream, and Julia took off her bonnet, letting the mountain breeze stir her hair. She told him more about her life, about growing up as an only child in a small Missouri town, about her father's work as a schoolteacher, and her mother's gift for growing things. She spoke of the cholera epidemic that had swept through in the spring of 1878, how quickly it had taken both her parents, how helpless she had felt watching them slip away. "I was alone after that," she said, staring at the water. "No siblings, no close family. The town did not know what to do with me. I was 20 years old, which was old enough to take care of myself, but young enough that people felt they should be responsible for me somehow. There were offers to take me in, but they all came with strings attached. Men who thought I should be grateful enough to marry them. Women who wanted free labor in exchange for room and board. I realized that if I stayed, I would always be the orphan girl, always be someone to be pitied or taken advantage of." "So you left," Liam said, understanding completely. He had done the same thing in his own way. "So I left. I saved every penny from selling my parents' belongings, joined a wagon train heading west, and ended up here. I have been working as a seamstress ever since, saving money and trying to figure out what comes next." She looked at him. "What about you? What is your story beyond the cabin and the mountains?" Liam found himself telling her things he had not spoken aloud in years. About his parents' small farm in Wyoming, about how hard they had worked to make a life there. About his younger sister, barely 12, who had been full of life and laughter. About coming home one day to find them all sick, the cholera moving through them like a poison, and how he had watched them die one by one despite everything he tried to do to save them. "I was 18, he said roughly. "Same age as you when you lost your folks, old enough to survive but too young to know how to live with the grief. I burned the farm after they were buried. Could not stand to look at it anymore, knowing they were gone. Then I headed into the mountains and did not come back out for 2 years. Julia's hand found his, her small fingers threading through his larger ones. The touch was simple, comforting, but it sent a jolt through Liam's entire body. "We have both been alone for a long time," she said softly. "Yes." Liam looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. Maybe too long. They sat there for a while in comfortable silence, the stream singing its endless song and the dog snoring softly in the shade. Liam could not remember the last time he had felt this settled, this at peace with another person's presence. Usually, even the few hours he had to spend in town left him itchy and anxious to get back to his solitude, but with Julia, it was different. With her, he wanted to slow down time, to stretch these moments out indefinitely. "I should probably start heading back," Julia said eventually, though she sounded reluctant. "Mrs. Crawford made it very clear that she expects me home by supper." "We should leave soon, then. It is a long ride back." Liam stood and offered her his hand, pulling her to her feet. She was so small, the top of her head barely reaching his chest, and he found himself wanting to wrap his arms around her and hold her close. Instead, he helped her back onto her horse and mounted his own. The dog had recovered enough energy to follow along as they started back down the trail, though Liam kept a close eye on it to make sure it did not overdo things. The ride back seemed to pass much faster than the ride up, though Liam would have been happy for it to take twice as long. They talked more, the conversation never lagging, and he learned that Julia liked to read, that she had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh, that she was deeply curious about the world and asked thoughtful questions about everything she saw. By the time they reached the outskirts of Cripple Creek, the afternoon sun was starting to cast long shadows. Liam felt a reluctance deep in his bones, a resistance to the idea of saying goodbye to her, even temporarily. At the boarding house, he helped her dismount and walked her to the door. The dog sat at his feet, looking between them as if sensing something important was happening. "Thank you for today," Julia said. "It was wonderful. Your home is beautiful, and I can see that the dog is going to be very happy there. You are welcome anytime. To check on him, I mean. Or just to visit." Liam cleared his throat, feeling awkward again. "I will be in town for another day or two. Maybe I could see you again before I head back up the mountain." Julia's face lit up. "I would like that very much. I do not have to work tomorrow. Perhaps we could have lunch together." "Lunch sounds good. Better than good. Perfect. There is a little restaurant on Main Street, the Mountain View it is called. They have decent food. Shall we meet there at noon? I will be there." Liam hesitated, then reached out and took her hand, bowing over it in a gesture that felt ridiculously formal but somehow appropriate. "Until tomorrow, Julia." "Until tomorrow, Liam." Her fingers squeezed his gently before she pulled away and disappeared into the boarding house. Liam stood on the porch for a moment, the ghost of her touch still warm on his hand, then made his way back to the livery stable. The dog followed faithfully, and Liam found himself talking to it as they walked. "Well, friend, I think we might be in trouble. The good kind of trouble, maybe, but trouble all the same." He scratched the dog's head. "You picked a good one to defend, I will give you that." That night, Liam lay in his narrow bed and found sleep elusive again. His mind was full of Julia, the sound of her voice and the light in her eyes when she laughed. He had been content in his solitude for so long, had convinced himself that he was meant to live alone in the mountains, that connecting with another person was not something he needed or even wanted. But one day with her had shattered that conviction completely. He wanted more. He wanted to hear all her stories and share all of his. He wanted to see her smile and hear her laugh and watch the way her expressions changed when she was thinking deeply about something. He wanted to show her all his favorite places in the mountains and teach her how to read the weather and the tracks of animals. He wanted to build a life with her, though that thought was terrifying and presumptuous and probably far too soon. He forced himself to breathe slowly and think rationally. She had lost her parents just as he had. She had made a life for herself in Cripple Creek, had work and a place to stay. She might not want to give all that up to live in isolation with a rough mountain man she had just met. The smart thing would be to slow down, to take his time and let things develop naturally instead of rushing headlong into something neither of them was ready for. But then he thought of her standing in that dusty street, arms spread wide to defend a dog that could not defend itself, her courage burning bright as a star. He thought of the understanding in her eyes when they had talked about loss and grief, the way she had reached for his hand without hesitation. He thought of how right she had looked in his cabin, how her presence had made the space feel like an actual home instead of just a shelter. Maybe sometimes you did not need time. Maybe sometimes you just knew. The next morning could not come fast enough. Liam was up before dawn again, restless and energized in a way he had not felt in years. He took even more care with his appearance this time, washing thoroughly and trimming his beard closer. He could not do much about his clothes beyond making sure they were clean, but he did his best. The dog was healing quickly, already putting more weight on its injured leg and showing more energy. Liam fed it well and left it tied comfortably in the stable with water and a place to rest. "I will be back later," he told it. "Be good." The hours until noon crawled by. Liam tried to occupy himself by checking on his horses and organizing his supplies, but his mind kept wandering to Julia. Finally, when the church bells began to toll 12, he made his way to the Mountain View restaurant. Julia was already there, sitting at a small table near the window. She had changed into a dress he had not seen before, a soft green that matched her eyes perfectly, and her hair was neatly arranged. When she saw him, her face broke into a smile that made his heart kick against his ribs. "You came," she said as he approached. "Of course I did." Liam removed his hat and sat down across from her, feeling oversized and clumsy in the dainty chair. "Did you think I would not?" "I was not sure. Last night, lying in bed, I kept thinking that maybe yesterday was just a strange dream, that maybe I had imagined how nice it was." "It was not a dream." Liam's voice came out rougher than he intended. "And it was more than nice. It was the best day I have had in longer than I can remember." Color rose in Julia's cheeks, but she held his gaze. "For me too." They ordered food, though Liam barely tasted what he ate. He was too focused on Julia, on the way she gestured when she talked, and the little expressions that crossed her face. She asked him more about his life in the mountains, and he found himself painting pictures with words, trying to convey the majesty of the high country, the way the world looked when you stood on a peak and could see for 100 miles in every direction. "It sounds lonely," Julia said thoughtfully, "but also peaceful. It is both. Sometimes the loneliness is hard, especially in the winter when you can go months without seeing another soul, but there is something clean about it too, simple. You versus the elements and nothing else matters." "Do you ever think about coming down to live in town, being around people more?" Liam considered the question honestly. "I used to think I never would, but lately," he paused, meeting her eyes, "lately I have been thinking that maybe there are things worth coming down from the mountain for." Julia's breath caught and Liam saw the understanding in her expression. She knew he was talking about her. "Liam, I barely know you and you barely know me, but I feel like there is something happening here, something important. Am I imagining that?" "No." His hand moved across the table to cover hers. "You are not imagining it, I feel it too." "I do not know what to do with it," Julia admitted. "I have never felt like this before. It is exciting and terrifying at the same time. Then we figure it out together. No rush, we just see where this goes." Relief and joy mingled in her expression. "I would like that." They talked through lunch and long after, until the restaurant owner started giving them pointed looks about the time. Reluctantly, they left, stepping out into the afternoon sunshine. "Walk with me?" Julia asked, and Liam offered her his arm. They strolled through Cripple Creek, drawing some curious glances from townspeople. Liam supposed they made an unusual pair, the tiny seamstress and the massive mountain man, but he found he did not care what anyone thought. All that mattered was the woman on his arm and the rightness of having her there. Julia showed him the dress shop where she worked, a small establishment run by a severe-looking woman named Mrs. Henderson, who eyed Liam with deep suspicion when Julia introduced them. "Pleased to meet you, madam," Liam said politely, and Mrs. Henderson sniffed. "Julia is my best seamstress. I hope you are not planning to distract her from her work, Mr. Kincaid." "No, madam, would not dream of it." Outside the shop, Julia laughed. "Do not mind her. She is suspicious of everyone, but she is a good employer and the work is steady. You enjoy it." "The sewing," Julia tilted her head, considering. "I enjoy making beautiful things. There is satisfaction in taking fabric and thread and creating something that makes someone happy. But if I am being honest, I think I would enjoy almost any work that let me be independent. After my parents died, I learned how important it is to be able to support yourself. I never want to be dependent on someone else's charity again." "That makes sense." Liam admired her strength, her determination to make her own way. "Though I hope you know that wanting to be independent is different from having to face everything alone. There is no shame in accepting help from someone who cares about you." "Is that what you are offering? Help?" "I am offering whatever you want. Friendship, certainly. Companionship, maybe more if you are open to it." Liam stopped walking and turned to face her. "Julia, I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I have lived alone in the mountains for 14 years, and in one day, you have made me realize how much I have been missing. I want to know you better. I want to spend time with you. I want to see if this feeling between us is real." Julia looked up at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "I want that too. But Liam, I live in town and you live in the mountains. How would that even work? I do not know yet, but we will figure something out." He cupped her face gently with one large hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "I am good at solving problems. It is what you learn when you live the way I do. And this is a problem I am very motivated to solve." She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. When she opened them again, they were full of hope and fear mingled together. "What if it does not work out? What if we try and it just makes everything harder?" "What if it does work out?" Liam countered. "What if we find something worth having? Is not that possibility worth the risk?" Julia was quiet for a long moment, and Liam could almost see her thinking it through, weighing the options. Finally, she nodded. "Yes, yes, it is worth the risk." Relief flooded through him, so strong it made him dizzy. "Then we try. We take it slow, we learn about each other, and we see what happens." "I can come up to visit on my days off," Julia said, her words coming faster now as she warmed to the idea. "And you come to town when you need supplies. We write letters when we are apart. We just take it one day at a time." "One day at a time," Liam agreed. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a start, and right now, that was enough. They continued walking, making their way to the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open land. The mountains rose in the distance, solid and eternal, and Liam felt the familiar pull of them in his chest. Soon he would need to return to his cabin, to check his trap lines and prepare for the coming winter. But the thought of leaving Julia behind was physically painful. "When do you have to go back?" Julia asked, as if reading his thoughts. "I was planning to leave tomorrow morning. I have been away from the cabin for almost a week now. Much longer, and I will start losing light for the work I need to get done before the snow comes." "Tomorrow," Julia repeated softly. "So soon. I will come back in 2 weeks. I need to bring down another load of furs, and I will need to make a big supply run before winter really sets in." He pulled her closer against his side. "And you could come up for a visit before then if you want, like we talked about. I have Sunday off. I could come up then if you will be there." "I will be there. I will come down Saturday evening and bring you up Sunday morning, then bring you back Sunday evening. Would that work?" Julia nodded, and Liam saw the relief in her expression that mirrored his own. Sunday was only 6 days away. He could manage 6 days. They walked back to the boarding house slowly, neither wanting to say goodbye. At the door, Liam took both her hands in his, marveling again at how small she was, how delicate. But he knew now that her size had nothing to do with her strength. "Thank you for today," he said, "for giving this a chance, for being willing to try. Thank you for seeing something in me worth trying for." Julia squeezed his hands. "Be safe going back up the mountain. I will worry about you." The idea that she would worry about him, that she cared enough to worry, made warmth spread through his chest. "I will be fine. Done it 1,000 times, but I will think of you the whole way." "I will think of you too." They stood there, hands clasped, neither wanting to be the first to let go. Finally, Julia rose up on her toes and pressed a quick, soft kiss to his cheek. "Until Sunday," she whispered. "Until Sunday." Liam forced himself to release her hands and step back. He watched as she slipped inside the boarding house, catching one last glimpse of her smile before the door closed. He walked back to the livery stable in a daze, his hand touching the spot where she had kissed him. The dog greeted him enthusiastically, and Liam crouched down to scratch its ears. "We are in deep, boy," he said, "but I do not think I mind." That evening, Liam made his preparations for the return journey. He checked over his supplies, made sure his horses were well rested and fed, and settled his account at the livery. The dog watched everything with interest, seeming to understand that they would be leaving soon. As the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Liam stood outside the stable and looked toward where he knew the boarding house stood. Somewhere in there, Julia was probably getting ready for bed, maybe thinking about him the way he was thinking about her. He had come to town expecting nothing more than a routine supply run. Instead, his entire world had shifted on its axis. He was still the same man he had been 4 days ago, still rough and solitary, and more comfortable with animals than people. But now there was a light shining in his future, a possibility he had never dared to imagine. A woman who had courage bigger than her frame, whose fierceness and compassion had captured his heart without him even realizing it was happening. A woman who made him want to be more than just a man surviving alone in the wilderness. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges they faced, Liam knew one thing with absolute certainty. Julia Preston had changed his life, and he would spend every day trying to prove himself worthy of her courage and her trust. The journey back up the mountain the next morning was familiar and strange at the same time. Liam had made this trip countless times, but now everything looked different. The trail he knew by heart seemed to wind past places he could show Julia, viewpoints where she would gasp at the beauty, meadows where they could stop and rest and talk for hours. The dog kept pace better than it had on the way down, its injury healing quickly now that it was being properly fed and cared for. Liam found himself talking to it more than he usually talked to anyone. "She is something special," is not she? Probably too good for a rough character like me, but I am going to do my best anyway. Figure if I can survive winters that kill grown men and wrestle with nature on her worst days, I can figure out how to be the kind of man she deserves. The dog wagged its tail, tongue lolling out happily as they climbed higher. When they finally reached the valley and the cabin came into view, Liam felt the usual sense of homecoming, but it was tempered now with an awareness of how empty the place was. The cabin was sturdy and well built, but it was just a structure. Julia had been right when she said it felt safe. What she had not said, but what Liam realized now, was that safety was not the same as home. Home was where you shared your life with someone else, where your solitude was a choice rather than a necessity. He threw himself into work over the next few days, checking his trap lines and starting the process of preparing for winter. There was wood to split and stack, game to hunt and smoke, repairs to make on the cabin and outbuildings. The physical labor was familiar and satisfying, but his mind kept drifting to Julia. He wondered what she was doing, if she was thinking about him too. He thought about Sunday, about seeing her again, and the anticipation was almost painful in its intensity. The dog, which Liam had started calling Courage in honor of Julia's fierce defense of it, proved to be excellent company. It followed him everywhere, watching with intelligent eyes as he worked, and seemed grateful for every scrap of attention. By the end of the week, it was putting full weight on its injured leg, and its coat was starting to shine with better health. "You clean up pretty good," Liam told it one evening as they sat on the porch and watched the sun set. "Julia is going to be happy to see how well you are doing." Saturday morning, Liam rose early and made the trip back down to Cripple Creek. He had bathed in the cold stream before leaving, scrubbing himself thoroughly and putting on his cleanest clothes. He wanted to look his best for Julia, even though he knew he would never be anything but rough around the edges. The trip down seemed to take forever, though he knew he was actually making good time. His heart was pounding with anticipation, and he had to force himself not to push his horse too hard. Finally, as evening was settling over the town, he rode into Cripple Creek and made his way to the boarding house. Mrs. Crawford answered his knock, her expression stern as always. "Mr. Kincaid, Julia mentioned you would be coming by this evening." "Yes, madam." "I am supposed to take her up to my place tomorrow morning. I will have her back by evening as promised. See that you do." Mrs. Crawford stepped aside to let him in. "Julia has been mending clothes all week to make up for taking tomorrow off. That girl works harder than anyone I have ever seen." Pride and protectiveness swelled in Liam's chest. Of course, Julia worked hard. She was not the kind of person who would take advantage or expect things to be handed to her. Julia appeared at the top of the stairs, and Liam's breath caught. She was wearing a simple dress, nothing fancy, but she was so beautiful it hurt to look at her. Her face lit up when she saw him, and she hurried down the stairs. "You came," she said, and there was relief and joy in her voice. "Of course. I said I would." Liam wanted to reach for her, but was acutely aware of Mrs. Crawford's watchful presence. "How have you been?" "Counting the days," Julia admitted with a shy smile. "I kept thinking Sunday would never come." "Me too." He cleared his throat. "I brought Courage down with me. He is at the stable if you want to see him before we head up tomorrow." "Courage," Julia's smile widened. "You named the dog Courage. Seemed fitting given the circumstances." Julia looked at Mrs. Crawford. "May I walk with Mr. Kincaid for a little while, just to see the dog?" The older woman sighed but nodded. "Be back within the hour, and stay where people can see you." They left the boarding house together, and as soon as they were out of sight of the windows, Julia slipped her hand into Liam's. The simple gesture sent warmth flooding through him. "I missed you," she said softly. Is that strange, to miss someone you barely know? If it is strange, then I am strange too, because I missed you every moment of every day. Liam squeezed her hand gently. Tell me about your week. What have you been doing? Julia launched into stories about her work, the customers she had dealt with, and the dresses she had made. She had a gift for storytelling, bringing the characters to life with her descriptions, and Liam found himself laughing at her dry observations about human nature. At the stable, Courage greeted Julia with enthusiasm, tail wagging so hard its whole body wiggled. Julia knelt down and let the dog lick her face, laughing with delight. "Oh, you look wonderful," she exclaimed, running her hands over its much improved coat. "Liam, you have worked a miracle. This is the same dog that was skin and bones just a week ago." "Good food and care work wonders," Liam said, watching the joy on her face. "He has been good company, follows me everywhere, and seems to understand when I need to talk things through." "What things have you been talking through?" Julia asked, looking up at him with those green eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Mostly how I am going to convince you that a rough mountain man is worth your time." The words came out more honest than Liam had intended, but he did not take them back. Julia stood, brushing off her skirt. "Liam, you do not have to convince me of anything. I already know you are worth my time. You are good and strong and honest. You stepped in to help when no one else would. You took responsibility for a hurt animal without hesitation. You have been nothing but respectful and kind to me. Why would I need convincing? Because I live in the middle of nowhere. Because I am more comfortable with silence than conversation most of the time. Because I do not know anything about courting or relationships or how to be what a woman like you deserves." Julia stepped closer and reached up to touch his face, her small hand gentle against his bearded cheek. "Maybe what I deserve is someone real, someone who does not put on airs or pretend to be something they are not. Someone who knows what real hardship is and has come through it with their kindness intact. Someone who looks at me like I am the most precious thing in the world." "You are," Liam said roughly, "the most precious thing in my world, already, and we have barely started." She went up on her toes, and this time when she kissed him, it was not on the cheek. Her lips met his softly, tentatively, and Liam felt like he had been struck by lightning. Every nerve in his body came alive, and he wrapped his arms around her carefully, afraid his strength might hurt her but unable to resist pulling her close. The kiss was sweet and brief, but when they parted, Liam saw his own wonder reflected in Julia's face. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh my." "Yeah," Liam agreed, incapable of more eloquent speech at the moment. They stood there wrapped in each other's arms until Courage pushed between them, demanding attention. The spell broke and they both laughed, stepping apart reluctantly. "I should get you back before Mrs. Crawford sends a search party," Liam said. They walked back to the boarding house slowly, hands clasped, neither wanting the evening to end. At the door, Julia turned to face him. "What time should I be ready tomorrow?" "Early. Around 7. That will give us the most time together before I have to bring you back. I will be ready." She squeezed his hand. "Sleep well, Liam. You too, Julia." He watched her go inside, then made his way back to the stable where he had arranged to sleep for the night. Courage curled up beside him, and Liam lay awake for a long time, his fingers touching his lips, still able to feel the ghost of Julia's kiss. Morning could not come fast enough. When Liam knocked on the boarding house door at 7 the next morning, Julia opened it almost immediately, as if she had been waiting right there for him. She was dressed in practical clothes suitable for riding, a dark split skirt and a sturdy blouse with a wide-brimmed hat to protect her from the sun. "Good morning," she said, her smile bright as dawn. "Good morning." Liam offered his arm. "Ready, more than ready, Mrs. Crawford appeared behind Julia, a wrapped bundle in her hands. "I packed you both some lunch, bread and cheese and some of my apple cake. You will need to keep your strength up." "Thank you, Mrs. Crawford," Julia said warmly, taking the bundle. "That is very kind of you." The older woman's stern expression softened slightly. "Well, I cannot have you starving up there in the wilderness. And you, Mr. Kincaid, you take good care of her, you hear me? With my life, madam." They rode out of town as the sun was just clearing the eastern peaks, painting everything in shades of rose and gold. Julia sat easily in her saddle, handling the mare with confidence, and Courage loped alongside them with his tail waving like a flag. "This is perfect," Julia said, breathing deeply of the mountain air. "I feel like I can finally breathe up here. The town gets so crowded and dusty sometimes. Wait until we get higher. The air gets even cleaner." They climbed steadily, and Liam found himself pointing out landmarks and telling Julia about the area. He showed her where a family of foxes had their den, pointed out the tracks of elk in the soft earth beside the trail, identified the calls of different birds. Julia absorbed everything with eager interest, asking questions and really listening to his answers. "You love it up here," she observed. "I can hear it in your voice when you talk about the mountains." "I do. They saved me when I did not think I could be saved." But he glanced at her. "I am learning that there are other things worth caring about too. Other ways to feel whole." Julia's cheeks flushed with color, but she held his gaze. "I am glad, because I think you are helping me feel whole too. I have been so focused on just surviving, on being independent and making my own way, that I forgot what it felt like to really connect with someone, to want something more than just getting through each day." They reached the valley before noon, and Julia gasped when she saw it spread out below them, even more beautiful than she had remembered. The wildflowers were in full bloom, carpeting the meadow in purple and gold, and the stream sparkled in the sunlight. "It is like a dream," she said softly. "Like something that cannot possibly be real. It is real, and you are welcome here anytime." Liam meant it with every fiber of his being. This place was his sanctuary, but having Julia here made it complete in a way he had not known it could be. They spent the afternoon exploring. Liam showed her the best fishing spots in the stream and taught her how to read the ripples to know where the trout were hiding. They walked through the forest, and he pointed out edible plants and medicinal herbs, sharing the knowledge he had accumulated over years of living off the land. Julia listened with rapt attention, occasionally stopping to examine something more closely or ask questions. For lunch, they sat on the bank of the stream and ate the food Mrs. Crawford had packed. The apple cake was delicious, sweet and spiced with cinnamon, and Julia laughed when Liam fed bits of the crust to Courage. "You have completely spoiled that dog," she said, shaking her head with amusement. "He deserves spoiling after what he went through. Besides, he is earning his keep. Good company and keeps the raccoons away from my supplies." After lunch, Julia asked if she could see inside the cabin again, and Liam was happy to oblige. This time, she looked at everything with more attention, examining his few books and asking about the tools on his walls. She ran her fingers over the furs stacked in the corner, feeling the softness of beaver and fox pelts. "You really do provide everything for yourself up here, do not you?" she said with wonder. "The food, the shelter, the clothes, it is incredible. It is just what needs doing. Not that different from what everyone did 100 years ago, before towns and stores and all that." Liam watched her move through his space and felt that same rightness he had felt the first time she had been here. But it can be lonely sometimes. Hard to talk to yourself for months on end without starting to feel a little crazy. Julia turned to face him, her expression serious. "Do you ever think about changing it, living somewhere less isolated? I have been thinking about it a lot lately, Liam admitted. But I do not know if I could handle town living. Too many people, too much noise. I would feel like I was suffocating. What if it was not full-time town living? What if there was a middle ground? What do you mean? Julia came closer, her eyes bright with an idea. What if we could find a place that was between your cabin and town? Somewhere you could still have your space and your quiet, but close enough to civilization that you were not completely cut off. And I could live there too, maybe keep doing my sewing but not have to answer to anyone else. We could build something together. The idea hit Liam like a thunderbolt. It was perfect, the solution he had not been able to see because he had been thinking in terms of all or nothing. But Julia was right. There was a middle ground, a compromise that would let them both have what they needed. That could work, he said slowly, turning it over in his mind. There are some parcels of land closer to town, maybe an hour's ride instead of 3. Still plenty of space and privacy, but close enough to Cripple Creek that you could visit when you needed to. I could still do my trapping and hunting, bring furs to trade. We would have the best of both worlds. Exactly. Julia was practically glowing with excitement. And Liam, if we were married, we could do it properly, pool our resources, really build something that belonged to both of us. The word married hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and wonderful. Liam stared at her, his heart pounding. Julia, are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting? She took a deep breath, her hands clasping together nervously. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other for just over a week. But Liam, I feel like I have known you forever. I feel like I was waiting my whole life to meet you, and now that I have, I do not want to waste any more time. I do not want to spend months or years courting properly while we both just get more frustrated with the distance between us. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you in the mornings and fall asleep beside you at night. I want to work alongside you and share everything with you. Is that crazy? If it is, then I am crazy too. Liam closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and cupped her face in his hands. Julia Preston, I think I fell in love with you the moment I saw you standing in that street defending courage. You have turned my whole world upside down, and I cannot imagine going back to the way things were before. If you are willing to take a chance on a rough mountain man who does not know the first thing about being a proper husband, then yes. Yes, I want to marry you. Julia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling so wide it lit up her whole face. Yes, you are saying yes. I am saying yes. Absolutely yes. Liam pulled her close and kissed her, pouring everything he felt into the contact. This kiss was deeper than their first one, more certain, and Julia responded with equal passion, her arms wrapping around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Liam rested his forehead against hers. How do we do this? What is the proper way to go about it? We could go to the minister in Cripple Creek. If we both truly want this, we could be married within a few days. Julia pulled back to look at him. Are you sure, Liam? I do not want you to feel rushed or pressured. If you need time to think about it, I will understand. I do not need time to think. I know what I want, and I want you. I want us. Liam took her hands, marveling at how small they were in his. We will do it properly, though. I will ask Mrs. Crawford for permission to court you formally, and we will talk to the minister. We will do everything right so nobody can say we did not. Mrs. Crawford is going to be shocked, Julia said with a slightly nervous laugh. She was already suspicious about me going up to visit you. Let her be suspicious. We are both adults and we know our own minds. Liam squeezed her hands gently. Julia, I do not have much to offer you. A life in the wilderness is hard, even with a cabin close to town. Winters are brutal. There will be times when we are snowed in for weeks at a time with nobody but each other for company. There will be no fancy dresses or parties or the things other women have. I do not want those things. I want you. I want a life where I wake up and know exactly why I am living it, where every day has purpose and meaning. I want to build something real with you, Liam. That is worth more than all the fancy dresses in the world. Looking at her, seeing the certainty and the love in her eyes, Liam felt the last piece of his heart that he had thought permanently broken slot back into place. She was right. They were right together. Sometimes you just knew. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans, talking about what kind of cabin they would build and where they might find suitable land. Julia had some money saved from her work, and Liam had furs he could sell. Together, they would have enough to buy a good piece of property and build something solid. We will need a bigger cabin than what you have now, Julia said practically. Room for both of us to work, maybe a separate area for my sewing. And eventually, we will need space for children, if we are blessed with them. Children. The word sent a thrill through Liam. He had never let himself imagine a family of his own, had thought that door was closed forever. But now, with Julia, anything seemed possible. How many children do you want? He asked. Julia smiled. I do not know. As many as we are blessed with, I suppose. I always wanted siblings growing up, so I would like to give our children that gift. Our children. Liam tested the words out loud and found they felt right. I like the sound of that. As the afternoon wore on, Liam realized with deep reluctance that he needed to start thinking about getting Julia back to town. He had promised Mrs. Crawford he would have her back by evening, and he was a man of his word. I wish we did not have to go, Julia said, echoing his thoughts. She was sitting beside him on the porch, her head resting against his shoulder. I wish we could just stay here forever. Soon we will not have to leave. Soon this will be our life every day. Liam pressed a kiss to the top of her head. But for now, I need to get you back before Mrs. Crawford sends the sheriff after me. The ride back down the mountain felt bittersweet. They were heading back to town, back to separation, but they were also heading toward their future together. Julia was quiet, but her hand frequently reached out to touch Liam's arm or leg, as if she needed the physical reassurance that he was real. By the time they reached Cripple Creek, the sun was setting, painting the sky in dramatic purples and oranges. Liam helped Julia down from her horse in front of the boarding house, and they stood close together in the gathering dusk. Tomorrow I will talk to the minister, Liam said, and I will speak to Mrs. Crawford properly about my intentions. We will do this right. Tomorrow, Julia agreed. And Liam. I love you. I know it is fast and maybe I should not say it yet, but I do. I love you. I love you too. The words came easily, naturally, as if he had been saying them to her forever. From the moment I saw you defending that scruffy dog with nothing but your courage. You stole my heart without even trying. Julia rose up and kissed him softly. Until tomorrow. Until tomorrow. He waited until she had gone inside, then made his way back to the stable with Courage at his heels. He was getting married. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. He was going to spend his life with Julia, going to build a home with her, going to wake up beside her every morning and share everything with her. Life is about to get very different, he told Courage as they settled in for the night. But I think it is going to be good. Really, really good. The dog wagged its tail in agreement, and Liam lay back on his bedroll with a smile on his face, already counting the hours until morning. The next morning, Liam was up before dawn, nerves and excitement making sleep impossible. He cleaned himself up carefully, wanting to make the best possible impression on both the minister and Mrs. Crawford. This was important, and he was determined to do it right. He went first to the church, a simple white building at the north end of town. The minister, Reverend Thomas, was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He listened as Liam explained the situation, his expression growing more thoughtful as the story unfolded. "Mr. Kincaid, I appreciate you coming to me with this. It shows respect for the institution of marriage and for Miss Preston." Reverend Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying Liam carefully. "However, I have to say that I am concerned about the speed of this courtship. You have known each other for barely more than a week. Marriage is a sacred covenant, not something to be entered into lightly. I understand your concern, Reverend, and I respect it. But I am not a young man, and Julia is not a young woman. We have both lived through hardship and loss. We know what we want, and we know our own minds." Liam met the minister's eyes steadily. "I love her. I will spend every day of my life working to be worthy of her and to make her happy. I will provide for her and protect her and cherish her. Is not that what marriage is supposed to be?" Reverend Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I would like to speak with Miss Preston as well, to hear from her that this is what she truly wants. If she confirms your story and if you are both certain, then I will perform the ceremony. But I will ask that you wait at least one more week. Use that time to be absolutely sure this is the right choice. If at the end of the week you both still feel the same way, then I will marry you with my blessing." A week felt like an eternity, but Liam recognized the wisdom in the minister's caution. "That is fair. Thank you, Reverend. Bring Miss Preston to see me this afternoon if she is available. I will want to speak with her privately." From the church, Liam went to the boarding house. Mrs. Crawford answered his knock, her eyebrows rising when she saw him standing there so early. "Mr. Kincaid, this is becoming quite the habit." "Mrs. Crawford, I need to speak with you about Julia. May I come in?" She studied him for a moment, then stepped back to allow him entry. "The parlor, if you please." Liam followed her into the small parlor and took off his hat, turning it nervously in his hands. "Madam, I want to ask permission to court Julia properly. My intentions are completely honorable. I want to marry her, and I have already spoken to the minister about performing the ceremony." Mrs. Crawford sat down heavily, her eyes wide. "Marry her? Mr. Kincaid, you have known her for barely more than a week." "I know how it looks, madam, but sometimes time does not matter. Sometimes you just know." Liam took a breath and tried to put his feelings into words. "Julia is the most remarkable woman I have ever met. She is strong and brave and kind. She stood up to 6 angry men to defend a helpless animal, and she did not back down even though she was terrified. That tells me everything I need to know about her character. I love her, Mrs. Crawford, and I want to spend my life with her." "And what does Julia say about all this?" "She wants the same thing. We talked about it yesterday, about building a life together." Mrs. Crawford was quiet, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed. "Julia has lived here for 6 months now, and in that time she has never given me a moment's trouble. She works hard, she is respectful, she keeps to herself. She has also been alone, and I could see that it weighed on her. When she came back from seeing you yesterday, she had a light in her eyes that I have never seen before. She was happy, truly happy, maybe for the first time since I have known her." Hope sparked in Liam's chest. "Then you are not opposed to this?" "I did not say that, Mrs. Crawford fixed him with a stern look. "I am concerned about the speed. I am concerned about the practical realities of the life you are offering her. But I also know that Julia is a grown woman who can make her own decisions. If this is what she truly wants, then I will not stand in her way. But Mr. Kincaid, if you hurt her, if you make her regret this choice, you will answer to me. Is that understood?" "Yes, madam, perfectly understood." Liam met her eyes steadily. "I will spend every day working to make her happy. You have my word on that." "Then you have my blessing, such as it is. But Liam," her voice softened slightly, "do not rush her. Let her have time to be sure. A week at least, maybe more. Let her really think about what she is giving up and what she is choosing. The minister said the same thing. He wants to wait a week before performing the ceremony. Liam twisted his hat in his hands. May I see Julia now? I need to tell her what the minister said, and he wants to speak with her this afternoon. Mrs. Crawford stood. I will get her. But you will speak in this parlor where I can keep an eye on things. I know I am being old-fashioned, but I have a responsibility to her. I understand, madam, and I appreciate you looking out for her. Julia appeared a few minutes later, still in her dressing gown with her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, softer, and Liam's breath caught at her beauty. Liam, is everything all right? Mrs. Crawford said you needed to see me. Everything is fine, better than fine. He wanted to reach for her, but was acutely aware of Mrs. Crawford's presence in the next room. I spoke to the minister and to Mrs. Crawford. The minister will marry us, but he wants us to wait a week. He wants to be sure we are certain about this. A week. Julia's face fell slightly, then she rallied. That is reasonable. He is being responsible. He also wants to speak with you this afternoon to hear from you that this is what you want. Liam studied her face carefully. Julia, if you have any doubts, any concerns at all, now is the time to say so. I will not be angry or hurt. I just need to know that you are sure. Julia came closer, her hands reaching for his. I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Are you sure? You are the one making the bigger sacrifice here. I am just a seamstress, and you are giving up your solitary life in the mountains for me. You are not just anything. You are everything. Liam squeezed her hands gently. And I am not sacrificing anything. I am gaining everything that matters. You are worth 100 cabins in the wilderness, Julia. You are worth more than anything I have ever had. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she was smiling. Then we will wait our week, and we will make absolutely sure, and then we will get married and build our life together. Together, Liam agreed, and the word had never sounded so good. The next week was both the longest and the shortest of Liam's life. He stayed in town, getting a room at the boarding house despite Mrs. Crawford's initial reluctance, and spent every possible moment with Julia. They walked through Cripple Creek, learning the rhythms of the town together. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing their dreams and fears and the small details of their lives. They met with Reverend Thomas, both separately and together, and answered his questions honestly about why they wanted to marry and what they expected from marriage. I can see that you both care deeply for each other, the minister said during one of their joint meetings. And I can see that you have both thought seriously about what you are committing to, but I want to make sure you understand the challenges ahead. Mr. Kincaid, you are used to being alone, making your own decisions without consulting anyone. Marriage means partnership. It means compromise. Are you prepared for that? I am, Liam said firmly. I would rather compromise with Julia every day than have complete freedom without her. And Miss Preston, you are talking about leaving behind everything familiar to live in isolation with a man you barely know. What if you find that life does not suit you? What if you miss the company of other women, the bustle of town, the comforts of civilization? Then we will figure it out together, Julia said with quiet certainty. Reverend, I have been alone for 3 years now, ever since my parents died. I have learned to be independent, to take care of myself. But I have also learned that independence is not the same as happiness. I would rather face challenges with Liam by my side than face an easy life alone. Reverend Thomas nodded, seeming satisfied. Then I will perform the ceremony on Saturday afternoon, 1 week from today. I will expect you both to arrive at the church at 2 o'clock. Mr. Kincaid, do you have rings? Liam had already thought of that. He had taken some of his savings and commissioned the town jeweler to make 2 simple gold bands. They would not be ready until Friday, but they would be perfect, solid and enduring like the love he felt for Julia. "I will have them by Friday, Reverend." As the week progressed, Liam also made practical preparations. He rode out to survey the land between his mountain cabin and Cripple Creek, looking for a suitable piece of property where they could build their home. He found it on Wednesday, a beautiful piece of land with a small stream running through it, nestled in a valley that would provide shelter from the worst winter storms, but still high enough to have spectacular views of the peaks. It was close enough to town that Julia could ride in when she wanted company or had sewing to deliver, but far enough out that they would have the privacy and quiet Liam craved. He approached the owner, a rancher named Samuel Martin, who had more land than he knew what to do with, and negotiated a fair price. They shook hands on the deal, and Liam paid half down with the promise to pay the rest after he brought down his next load of furs. Mr. Martin even offered to help with the cabin building, saying he owed Liam a favor from years back when Liam had helped him track a mountain lion that was killing his cattle. "You are getting married?" Mr. Martin asked with surprise. "I thought you were a confirmed bachelor, Kincaid." "I thought so too. Then I met Julia and everything changed." Liam shared his news with Julia that evening and her excitement was palpable. "Our land," she breathed, her eyes shining. "We are really going to do this. We are going to build a home together. We are." Liam pulled her close, not caring that they were standing in the middle of Main Street where anyone could see. "After we are married, we will live in my mountain cabin while we build the new place. It will be cramped, but it should only take a month or so to get the new cabin weatherproof. Then we will be in our own home before winter really sets in. I do not care if it is cramped. As long as I am with you, anywhere will feel like home." Saturday arrived both too quickly and not fast enough. Liam woke before dawn, too nervous and excited to sleep. He dressed carefully in his best clothes, a new shirt he had bought specially for the occasion and pants he had scrubbed clean. He trimmed his beard close and combed his hair back, looking at himself in the mirror and hardly recognizing the man staring back at him. He looked happy. That was the difference. For 14 years he had looked at his reflection and seen only grim determination, the face of a man focused purely on survival. But now there was light in his eyes, joy in the curve of his mouth. Julia had done that. She had given him back his life, Mrs. Crawford had arranged for Julia to get ready in her private quarters, and she had recruited several of the other boarding house residents to help. Liam was not allowed to see Julia before the ceremony, which made him anxious and impatient, but he respected the tradition. At 1:30, he made his way to the church. Courage walked beside him, the dog's presence a comfort. Word had spread through town about the wedding, and to Liam's surprise, quite a few people had gathered to watch. He supposed a mountain man getting married was unusual enough to draw interest. Reverend Thomas was waiting inside the church, his expression warm. "Are you ready, Liam?" "More than ready." "And nervous?" "Terrified," Liam admitted, "but in a good way." The minister smiled. "That is how you should feel. It means you understand the magnitude of what you are about to do. But I have watched you both this week, seen how you are with each other, and I have faith that you are making the right choice." At 2 o'clock exactly, the church door opened and Julia walked in on Mrs. Crawford's arm. Liam's breath left his body in a rush. She was beautiful, so beautiful it hurt. She wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Henderson had helped her make, the fabric flowing around her small frame. Her hair was pinned up with small white flowers woven through it, and her face was radiant with happiness. Their eyes met across the length of the church, and everything else fell away. There was only Julia, walking toward him with steady steps, her sage green eyes locked on his. She was smiling, that bright, joyful smile that had captured his heart from the start, and Liam felt his own face break into a grin. When she reached him, Mrs. Crawford placed Julia's hand in his and stepped back. Her eyes were suspiciously bright, and she nodded at Liam once, a gesture of approval and blessing. Reverend Thomas began the ceremony, but Liam barely heard the words. He was too focused on Julia, on the way her hand trembled slightly in his, on the love shining in her eyes. When it came time for the vows, he spoke as clearly and firmly, meaning every word. I, Liam Kincaid, take you, Julia Preston, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you and cherish you, to protect you and provide for you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. Julia's voice was softer but no less certain as she spoke her vows. I, Julia Preston, take you, Liam Kincaid, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you and cherish you, to stand by your side, to build a life with you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. Liam slipped the gold band onto her finger, marveling at how delicate her hand looked in his large, calloused one. She did the same for him, and the weight of the ring felt right, like it had always belonged there. By the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Liam, you may kiss your bride. Liam cupped Julia's face gently and kissed her, pouring all his love and joy and gratitude into the contact. She kissed him back with equal passion, her hands gripping his shirt, and someone in the congregation whistled. They broke apart, both laughing, and turned to face the gathered townspeople as husband and wife. The reception was held at the boarding house, Mrs. Crawford having arranged for food and drinks, despite her initial reservations about the quick wedding. People came to offer their congratulations, and Liam shook more hands than he had in the previous 10 years combined. But through it all, he never let go of Julia's hand, keeping her anchored to his side. When they finally escaped the celebration as evening was falling, Liam helped Julia onto her horse and swung up onto his own. Courage followed along behind as they rode out of town, heading for the mountain cabin where they would spend their wedding night. "Are you happy?" Liam asked as they climbed higher, leaving civilization behind. "Deliriously," Julia said, her face glowing in the fading light. "I am married to the man I love, and we are starting our life together. How could I be anything but happy?" "I never thought I would have this," Liam admitted. "After I lost my family, I thought I was meant to be alone. I made peace with it, or at least I thought I did. But now I know I was not at peace at all. I was just surviving. You have taught me the difference between surviving and living, Julia. You have given me my life back. And you have given me a home," Julia said softly. "Not just a place to live, but a real home. Somewhere I belong, someone I belong with. I was drifting before I met you, just going through the motions. But now everything has purpose and meaning." They reached the valley as the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Liam dismounted and helped Julia down, then led her into the cabin. He had spent hours preparing it for this night, cleaning everything thoroughly, laying out fresh furs on the bed, even picking wildflowers and putting them in a jar on the table. Julia looked around and pressed her hand to her heart. "Liam, it is perfect. You are perfect." He pulled her close, his hand spanning her small waist. "I love you, Mrs. Kincaid. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you too." She went up on her toes and kissed him. "And you never have to be scared. We have each other now. Whatever comes, we will face it together." That night, in the cabin high in the Colorado mountains, Liam Kincaid and Julia Preston Kincaid began their life together as husband and wife. And when Liam woke the next morning with Julia sleeping peacefully in his arms, her head resting on his chest and her hand over his heart, he knew with absolute certainty that every hard thing he had endured, every year of loneliness and grief, had been worth it to bring him to this moment. The months that followed were the happiest of Liam's life. He and Julia settled into a rhythm, working together to maintain the mountain cabin while making plans for the new house they would build on their land. Julia adapted to mountain life with remarkable ease, learning to hunt and fish and preserve food for the winter. She was not afraid of hard work, and she threw herself into every task with determination. But it was the small moments that Liam treasured most. Waking up beside her every morning and falling asleep with her in his arms every night. Cooking meals together and eating by the fire while they talked about their day. The sound of her humming while she worked on her sewing. The way she would look up and smile when he came in from checking the trap lines, like his presence made her whole world brighter. As September turned to October, they began building the new cabin. True to his word, Samuel Martin came to help, bringing several of his ranch hands. Other men from town volunteered their time as well, and what Liam had expected to take a month was completed in 3 weeks. The cabin was larger than his mountain place, with separate areas for sleeping, cooking, and working. There was a room for Julia's sewing, with good light from large windows and a covered porch where they could sit and watch the sunset over the peaks. "It is our home," Julia said the first time they walked through the completed structure. "Really and truly ours. We built this together, Liam." "We did." Liam pulled her close, looking around at what they had created. "And we will fill it with life and love and maybe, someday, children." Julia looked up at him with shining eyes. "Maybe someday soon. I think I might be pregnant, Liam. It is early yet and I am not certain, but I think so." Liam's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. "Pregnant, we are going to have a baby, maybe. I will know for certain in a few more weeks, but all the signs are there." She bit her lip, suddenly looking worried. "Are you happy about it?" "I know we have not talked much about timing and maybe this is too soon, but happy." Liam cut her off with a kiss that left them both breathless. "Julia, I am beyond happy. I am overwhelmed and terrified and absolutely thrilled. A baby, our baby." They moved into the new cabin in early November, just as the first serious snowfall hit. The building was solid and warm, and Julia had made curtains for the windows and sewn quilts for the bed. It felt like a real home, lived in and loved. As the winter deepened, they settled into domesticity. Liam hunted and trapped, providing meat and furs. Julia cooked and sewed, making clothes for them both and taking on occasional sewing work from town when the weather permitted travel. They were isolated but not lonely, complete in each other's company. Julia's pregnancy was confirmed by mid-December, and they celebrated quietly, just the two of them and Courage, who seemed to sense something important was happening. Liam found himself constantly in awe of the changes in Julia's body, the way her belly slowly began to round, the glow that seemed to emanate from her. "Are you scared?" he asked her one evening as they sat by the fire. "About having the baby, I mean. We are so far from town, from a doctor." "A little," Julia admitted. "But women have been having babies for thousands of years, most of them in places more isolated than this. And I have you. I know you will take care of me no matter what." "With my life," Liam promised fiercely. "Nothing is going to happen to you or our baby." "I will make sure of it." Winter passed slowly, the days short and the nights long, but Liam found he did not mind the way he had in past years. Having Julia, there transformed everything. They spent the evenings reading aloud to each other from his small collection of books, or playing card games, or simply talking. Julia told him stories about her childhood, and he shared memories of his family that he had kept locked away for years. It was healing, this sharing, this opening up of old wounds so they could finally close properly. By March, Julia was heavily pregnant, and Liam was a bundle of nerves. He made trip after trip to town despite the difficult conditions, stocking up on supplies and consulting with the doctor about what to expect when the baby came. The doctor, a gruff older man named Dr. Harrison, promised to come stay with them as Julia got closer to her due time. "First babies can be unpredictable," Dr. Harrison said. "Could be early, could be late. I will come out and stay at your place for the last 2 weeks so I am there when it happens." True to his word, Dr. Harrison arrived at their cabin in mid-April with his medical bag and a no-nonsense attitude. Julia welcomed him warmly, showing him to the small guest room they had prepared. Having him there eased some of Liam's anxiety, though he still found himself watching Julia constantly for any sign that the baby was coming. It happened on a beautiful spring morning, sunlight streaming through the windows and the birds singing outside. Julia's water broke while she was making breakfast, and she looked up at Liam with a mixture of excitement and fear. "It is time," she said simply. The next 12 hours were the longest of Liam's life. He stayed by Julia's side the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and whispering encouragement even as his heart felt like it might burst from his chest with fear and anticipation. Dr. Harrison worked with calm efficiency, and Julia was incredibly brave, bearing the pain with gritted teeth and determined silence. Finally, as the sun was beginning to set, a baby's cry filled the cabin. Liam felt tears streaming down his face as Dr. Harrison held up a squirming, red-faced infant. "You have a son," the doctor announced with a smile, "strong and healthy from the sound of those lungs. A son." Liam looked at Julia, who was exhausted but glowing with joy, and felt his heart expand with love so fierce it was almost painful. "Doctor." Harrison cleaned and wrapped the baby, then handed him to Julia, who cradled the tiny bundle against her chest. "He is perfect," she whispered. "Liam, look at him. He is absolutely perfect." Liam sat on the edge of the bed and looked down at his son, taking in the tiny features and the dark hair that already showed on his head. The baby's eyes opened briefly, unfocused but searching, and Liam gently touched one impossibly small hand. The baby's fingers curled around his thumb, and Liam felt something break open inside him. "Hello, son," he said softly. "Welcome to the world." They named him Daniel after Julia's father, with the middle name of James after Liam's father. Daniel James Kincaid. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, and watching Julia with him made Liam fall in love with her all over again. She was a natural mother, patient and gentle, but also fierce in her protection of their child. As spring turned to summer, they settled into a new rhythm, this one revolving around Daniel's needs. Liam found that fatherhood suited him, though it was terrifying at times. He loved holding his son, marveling at how something so small could have such a huge presence. He loved watching Daniel discover the world, his eyes tracking movement and his tiny hands reaching for everything. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with Daniel sleeping between them, Julia turned to Liam with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about that day we met, when you saw me defending courage?" "I think about it all the time," Liam admitted. "It changed my entire life. If I had not come to town that particular day, if I had not happened to see you, we might never have met. All of this," he gestured to encompass their home, their land, their sleeping son, "might never have happened." "I think we would have found each other somehow," Julia said softly. "I do not believe in much, but I believe in this. We were meant to be together, Liam. The universe moved heaven and earth to make sure we found each other. Maybe you are right." Liam reached over Daniel to take Julia's hand. "All I know is that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Daniel, you are my whole world now, and you are ours." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and the stars began to appear. Courage was sleeping at their feet, and from somewhere in the valley, an owl called out to the night. Liam felt a peace so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was everything he had never known he wanted. This was home. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and milestones. Daniel grew from a baby into a toddler, then a young boy full of energy and curiosity. He had Julia's green eyes and Liam's dark hair, and his laugh was the sweetest sound Liam had ever heard. Liam taught him to track animals and identify plants, to respect the wilderness and understand its dangers. Julia taught him to read and to be kind, to stand up for what was right even when it was hard. When Daniel was 3, Julia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah after Liam's mother. Where Daniel was bold and adventurous, Sarah was quiet and thoughtful, observing everything with serious eyes. She had her mother's courage, though, that same fierce determination that had first captured Liam's heart. 2 years later came another son, Thomas, who was a perfect blend of his siblings' personalities. Their cabin rang with the sound of children's laughter and occasional arguments, with the patter of running feet and the chaos of family life. Liam never stopped marveling at the life he had built with Julia. On their 10th wedding anniversary, he took her back up to his original mountain cabin, just the two of them, while Mrs. Crawford watched the children in town. The cabin was still there, weatherproof and solid, though Liam only used it occasionally now for his longer hunting trips. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Julia asked as they sat on the porch of the mountain cabin, looking out over the valley. She was older now, the years and childbearing having left their mark, but to Liam she was more beautiful than ever. "Best 10 years of my life," Liam said simply. "Every day with you has been a gift, Julia. Every single day. Even the hard ones. The times when Daniel had croup and we thought we might lose him. The winter when we were snowed in for 6 weeks and the children were climbing the walls with cabin fever. The times when money was tight and we had to scrape by. Even then. Especially then, because those are the times when I got to see how strong you are, how committed we both are to this family we built. We have weathered every storm together, and that makes everything worth it." Julia leaned against him and Liam wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "I love you, Liam Kincaid. I loved you from the moment you stepped in to help me defend that scruffy dog. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I love you too, my fierce, brave, beautiful wife. You saved me, Julia. In every way a person can be saved. I was barely living before I met you. Now I am more alive than I ever thought possible." As they sat there together, watching the stars come out one by one, Liam thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. He thought about the young man he had been, broken by loss and retreating into the mountains to hide from life. He thought about that day in Cripple Creek, when he had seen a tiny woman defending a helpless dog with nothing but her courage and conviction. That moment had changed everything. That moment had given him back his life and his future. And every day since had been proof that sometimes the best things come when you least expect them, that love can find you even in the loneliest places, and that courage comes in all sizes. Julia had been small in stature, but enormous in spirit. Her courage had been bigger than her frame, and he had loved her fierceness from the first moment he saw it. That love had grown and deepened over the years, becoming the foundation of everything good in his life. They returned home the next day to the happy chaos of their children and the solid comfort of the home they had built together. Life continued its steady march forward, bringing new challenges and new joys. The children grew older, developing their own personalities and dreams. Daniel talked about becoming a rancher like Mr. Martin, while Sarah wanted to be a teacher like her grandfather had been. Thomas was still young enough that his aspirations changed by the day, but he was always full of life and mischief. Liam and Julia grew older too, their hair going gray and their bodies showing the wear of hard work and mountain living. But they faced it all together, hand in hand, the way they had from the beginning. Their love did not fade or diminish with time. Instead, it grew richer, deepened by shared experiences and the life they had created. Courage lived to an impressive age for a dog, finally passing peacefully in his sleep when Daniel was 12. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the valley, and Liam made a simple marker. Courage, it read. The dog who brought two people together. Forever remembered. More dogs came after Courage, a succession of strays and puppies that the children brought home, and the cabin was rarely without the sound of barking and the presence of wagging tails. Each animal was loved and cared for, a living reminder of the dog that had started it all. As Liam approached 50, he found himself thinking more and more about legacy, about what he and Julia would leave behind. They had 3 wonderful children who were growing into good people. They had built a home and a life from nothing but love and determination. They had faced every challenge together and come through stronger, but more than that, they had proved that courage and love could overcome anything. That 2 people who had been broken by loss could heal each other and build something beautiful. That the size of your frame did not determine the size of your spirit, and that sometimes the fiercest warriors came in the smallest packages. On a clear autumn day when Liam was 52 and Julia was 45, they stood together on the porch of their home and watched their children play in the yard. Daniel was 20 now, already courting a rancher's daughter. Sarah was 17, smart and determined, preparing to go to teacher's college. Thomas was 15, full of energy and dreams of adventure. "We did good, did not we?" Julia said softly, leaning against Liam's solid frame. "We did better than good. We did amazing." Liam pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I could not have asked for a better life, Julia. You gave me everything I did not even know I needed." "We gave each other everything," Julia corrected. "That is how partnerships work. That is how love works." She was right, of course. She usually was. Liam smiled and pulled her closer, watching the sun set over the mountains that had been his refuge and his home for so many years. The peaks were eternal, unchanging, standing watch over the valleys below. But everything else had changed, had been transformed by the love of one small, fierce woman who had defended a helpless dog and stolen a mountain man's heart in the process. As the stars began to appear and their children's laughter echoed through the valley, Liam Kincaid knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. His journey had been long and hard, marked by loss and loneliness and years of just surviving. But it had all led him here, to this perfect moment with the woman he loved and the family they had built together. And that, he thought, was worth everything. Years continued to unfold like the pages of a well-loved book, each one bringing new chapters to their story. The children grew into adults, each finding their own path while remaining tied to the home their parents had built. Daniel married his rancher's daughter, Mary, and they settled on a piece of land adjacent to Liam and Julia's property. Before long, grandchildren arrived, filling the valley with new life and laughter. Sarah completed her teaching education and returned to Cripple Creek, where she opened a small school. She remained unmarried by choice, dedicated to her students and her work, though she visited home often and was doted on by her parents and siblings alike. Thomas, true to his adventurous spirit, spent several years exploring the West before finally settling down with a spirited woman named Catherine whom he met in Denver. They made their home in town but visited the mountain cabin frequently, bringing their own children to learn from their grandfather's wisdom about the wilderness. As Liam moved into his 60s, his body began to slow down. The hard years of mountain living had taken their toll, leaving him with stiff joints and occasional pain. But he never complained, considering it a small price to pay for the life he had lived. Julia remained by his side through it all, her love as fierce and constant as it had been that first day in Cripple Creek. One spring morning, when Liam was 68 and Julia was 61, they took a walk together through the valley they called home. The wildflowers were in full bloom, painting the meadow in brilliant colors, and the stream sang its eternal song. They walked slowly, hand in hand, comfortable in the silence that only comes from decades of shared life. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Julia asked suddenly. "When you helped me defend courage, I said a lot of things that day. You said I had real courage, that standing up to those men took bravery." She squeezed his hand. "But Liam, the truth is you gave me my courage back. When my parents died, I felt lost and scared. I was just going through the motions of living. But then I saw that dog being hurt and something woke up inside me, something that said I still had fight left in me. And then I saw you," Liam said softly, "and I knew I had to know you, had to be part of your life somehow. You woke something up in me too, Julia, something I thought had died with my family all those years ago." They stopped walking and turned to face each other. Julia reached up to touch Liam's face, her fingers tracing the lines that time had etched there. "We saved each other," she said simply. "Two broken people who found each other and became whole. The best decision I ever made was stepping in to help you that day. Everything good in my life came from that one moment of choice. And my best decision was accepting your help, was trusting you and taking a chance on us." Julia smiled, her eyes bright with tears and joy mingled together. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Every hard day, every challenge, every moment, all of it just to have this life with you." Liam pulled her close, holding her against his chest the way he had done countless times over the decades. She fit perfectly there, as if that space had been designed specifically for her. "I love you, Julia Kincaid. More today than yesterday, and less than I will tomorrow." "And I love you, Liam Kincaid, forever and always." They stood there in the meadow, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. The mountains stood watch around them, eternal and unchanging, bearing witness to their love story. As they walked back toward their cabin, they passed the small hillside where courage was buried. The marker was weathered now, but still standing, a testament to the dog that had brought them together. Julia paused and placed her hand on the marker for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being worth defending, for bringing him into my life." Liam wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and they stood together in the mountain sunshine, grateful for every moment, every memory, every day of the life they had shared. Their story had started with an act of courage and compassion, and it had become something extraordinary. A love that had weathered time and hardship, that had created a family and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for. A life well lived, a love well earned, and the courage to reach for happiness even when it seemed impossible. Julia had been small in stature but enormous in spirit, and Liam had been a lonely mountain man who thought his heart was permanently closed. Together, they had proved that courage comes in all forms, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that sometimes the most extraordinary lives begin with a single moment of bravery in defense of something helpless and innocent. Their grandchildren would grow up hearing the story of how Grandma Julia had defended a stray dog against a group of angry men, and how Grandpa Liam had fallen in love with her fierceness in that instant. They would learn about courage and compassion, about standing up for what is right even when you are afraid, about the power of love to transform lives. And perhaps, in hearing those stories, they would carry that same courage forward into their own lives, creating new stories of bravery and love for future generations. As the sun set over the Colorado mountains on that perfect spring day, Liam and Julia Kincaid sat on their porch and watched their valley sink into twilight. They had lived a full life, rich with love and family, and the deep satisfaction of work done well. They had faced every challenge together and emerged stronger. They had built something lasting from nothing but determination and devotion. And through it all, they had never forgotten that first moment, that first spark of connection that had changed everything. The fierce woman defending the helpless dog. The mountain man who recognized her courage and fell in love with her wildness. Two souls finding each other in a dusty street in Cripple Creek, Colorado, and choosing to build a life together against all odds. It was a love story for the ages, simple in its beginning but profound in its impact. And it proved, beyond any doubt, that sometimes the greatest love stories start with a single act of courage, and that the fiercest hearts can beat in the smallest frames.